Hello, everybody.
All right.
Oh,
For you, Christina. All right, we've got a full contingent. It being one, I'd like to call the Hamilton Finance and Advisory Committee to order. Do a roll call vote or attendance rather. Starting with you, Valerie.
Valerie McCormick here.
Christina Schenk Hargrove present.
Nick Tenson here.
Dave Wanger here.
And John Prulidge here. So we have a full contingent. I don't see
Hello, Rick.
notice additional members of the public. So why don't we go to our next agenda item? We've got Rick and Anthony here from HDC. Welcome. Thank you both for attending our meeting and providing us with a bit of an update and hopefully a good discussion.
Great.
I'll turn it to both of you.
Well, thank you for allowing us to attend your meeting. And Anthony and I will try and make this short and to the point. I just wanted to update you. As of January 29th, we turned over the 5963 Willow Street property. And if you've gone by recently, you'll see they're actually in the demolition phase. They've put fencing around the whole thing and they're taking down trees and moving dirt around. So that's nice to see the beginning of that process. So we netted out from the sale, the minimum purchase price was $1 million. We netted after paying off our mortgage and closing expenses and $538,966.86. And we're looking to reinvest that money as soon as possible because, as I said to John, it's a blessing and a curse. A blessing because we have the funds and to reinvest in and do a similar project to Willow Street somewhere in the commercial district. And a little bit of a curse because people will look at us and say, well, you're sitting on all this money. What are you doing with it? And you don't need the
Town
meals.
hall.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Oh, I'm sure those things will come up. Town hall, the schools, turf fields. But fortunately, we can't spend that money anywhere else other than the commercial district. But as I expressed to John, my concern was having that money, there might be some people thinking, oh, well, you don't need the meals tax anymore. But that's couldn't be farther from the truth because when we find a property to reinvest, we're going to have to get a mortgage and we're going to need an income stream to use to pay off that mortgage. While we can put down a hefty down payment, let me give you an example. We have approached the owners of what is the Dodge Tree property in Welch and Lamson. And through the due diligence of Chad Smith, who's on the board, he discovered who the owners were and contacted them directly. And they were, quite friendly and engaging, but they did not express interest in selling the property, at least yet. And we reached out and talked to Welch and Lamson, and we haven't heard back from them. So we're actively looking for other properties in town to reinvest the money in, and that those two are the most likely and obvious places. John, you had asked if we could just do a little bit of a summary on what we were paying for taxes on the Willow Street property, and then what is it going to generate when the Willow Street project is done. I talked to the assessor's office and also with Dave Tragorth to get an estimated amount of tax revenue from the project once it's finished. Dave's estimating about $50,000 tax revenue, as opposed to, and Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think we were paying about $6,500 on an annual basis for real estate taxes?
I think it was a little bit more than that, it was less than
Okay.
10, it was less than 10,000, but it's a little more than 6,500.
Okay. So we'll call it 10,000 because I don't have that number right in front of me. So we've expanded that by 500% or a factor of 5. So we'd love to do that at another property for obvious reasons, because tax revenue is king these days. And so that's where we are right now. Just wanted to give everybody on the FinCom just a quick overview of what we've been doing and how we've been spending meals tax revenues and what the results are going to be. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. And Anthony, if you want to kick in anything, feel free.
Rick,
I-
maybe
I agree with everything that Rick said. We're looking to, it took us a long time to finalize this project. So now that we know what we're doing, we're hoping to do something similar to that. So, we have the money, we'd like to kind of reinvest it and, leverage what we've accomplished over the last 7 years. And hopefully it doesn't take another 7 years to do another property that benefits the downtown.
And in terms of the meals tax money that went in over the past 7 years, which effectively then generated that $1 billion transaction, which netted the 538. About how much in CPA funds went in over the last 7 years? And really, let me, I'll tell you where I'm going with this. And in addition to the question I'd asked Rick before about increase in the tax rolls, is really trying to roll this all up into almost like a case study why what the HTC is doing matters. And here's a perfect example of a transaction that is a net positive for the town. I think you can look at it on a number of fronts. It's increase in taxes, just pure profitability. I'm guessing just off of the transaction alone, and then as well as potential for eating away at our affordable housing gap. And I think putting that all together so that, because you have members of the community will ask the question of, why do we have, meals tax money going to the HTC? And I think this is a great success story to point to. Having that all rolled up, I think it is important, and certainly any way we can help.
So you want to see what we've gotten in meals tax money for the last 7 years?
Well, right, and just sort of looking in before the transaction,
Right.
that eventually netted $1 million on the sale. How much went into that in terms of
Right.
Town funds? Because obviously it was financed.
Yes,
So-
I mean, as long as I've been on the board, it's been about $65,000 each year, except for 1 year. I think the year before the pandemic, it was 75,000, 73,000.
Right.
But I'm sure we can go back and do a summary of, what we received. We didn't just work on the project, we were doing things, downtown, every year there was money earmarked for the flowers, the wreaths and all that. And so there's all kinds of things that were happening.
Other things, yeah, aside from the transaction, it's really more just the specific transaction, because
Okay, all right.
it'll basically show that just looking at the transaction alone it was a profitable transaction for the HTC. On top of that, it's now going to generate future tax money for the town.
Right.
And as well as other benefits.
Right.
So I think, information like that, is helpful, and I think, we would certainly, anyway, we can help maybe, put the figures together to make that case, would be helpful.
Okay, very good. Be happy to do that.
Yep.
In the meantime, we're going to be looking at we're paying for half the traffic study that's just about to wrap up, I think, by the end of this month downtown. That was part of the agreement with the abutters and neighbors, is to pay half the cost for a traffic study. And no surprise, some of the key findings are that that most on-street parking is unregulated. There's a real confusion about signage, and there's a real mix of regulations downtown or sidewalk conditions. There's no parking enforcement. Sidewalks are used for residential parking. So we're probably, I'm thinking out loud here, I haven't, the board hasn't taken a position on this, but probably looking to see if we can be of assistance in non-capital ways to encourage the better marking, signage at the downtown in terms of crosswalks, sidewalks, other things. The biggest problem in the downtown is the lack of cohesion between the shopping center and Railroad Avenue. And so we'll be investigating ways that we can try and help improve that condition while we investigate ways to reinvest the funds.
Great. Any questions for Rick or Anthony?
Like we put them to sleep.
I know.
No. Got a lot to write down.
Okay, well, you know, we're always welcome any questions. Take a look at the project that's going on Willow Street. I think it's pretty exciting. They look like they're on schedule, and hopefully in a year, I think they're talking late summer 22 for that project to be completed, up and running. So
Rick, just a quick question about relating with the neighbors. Is that still an ongoing dynamic?
no, we've actually shut down talking to the neighbors, and you know, nobody wants to hear anything. No, actually, well, first of all, we have Anthony or Tony Passaretti is on the board as an associate, and he's a direct abutter. And Dave Tragorth has, they're very good about this. They just had a meeting, Zoom meeting last week with all the abutters to inform them of what's going on with the schedule, and of particular interest to the abutters was they provided a landscaping plan showing what the plantings were going to look like and describing how they were going to screen the project from the abutters. So, so far so good. And, you know, Dave is CCing me on all their communications with the neighbors. So we're pretty up to speed there. And I assume if there's any problem that Tony will get back to us, let us know what's going on, if there's any need for intervention.
Thank you.
All right, well, very good. So thank you for allowing us to make a presentation, and if anybody has any future questions, let us know.
Appreciate the update, and also let us know if there's any, you know, additional ways that we can help your cause as well.
One last thing is, I'll switch hats here. On the planning board, we're talking about expanding the commercial district to include the Winthrop School site. And we're looking at various options, but that's something I know I think you guys have been talking about or advocating, even though it will probably be when something actually happens on that site, it'll be long past when we're on any committee. But we figured we'd try and lay the groundwork for expansion of the commercial district, because that's a prime piece of town property that should be generating substantial revenues. So, and maybe if we get that passed by town meeting, it'll help light a fire under the regional school committee to action on planning for consolidation of the school.
Rick, that's the rezoning? Is that the change of zoning?
Yes, it would. We would look to take the do Winthrop School and the Public Safety Building and the Senior Center and incorporate all of it into the commercial district.
Right. Did I understand you're aiming for ATM this
Not,
year?
I don't think so. This is, we want to take this nice and slow, so maybe fall town meeting. We're trying to take the path of least resistance in terms of potential opposition. So we're looking at actually 2 properties on Bay Road that are on Carriage Lane that would be incorporated into the commercial district so that it was contiguous on both sides of Bay Road. But I think that conversation needs to go slowly, and we want to make sure the neighbors are involved and understand why we're doing this, how it will impact them, and see if we can get some sort of consensus before taking it to town meeting.
Thank you.
That's great. I mean, certainly my opinion is the more groundwork we can lay, the better. There's a lot of parties involved with this in terms of school facilities and that planning, and it's going to go to slow pace. But the more that we can do,
Yeah,
on our side to grease the wheels and get it in the forefront of public discussion, the better.
well, I think this is good timing because of the schools and the financial sustainability of the town. So I
Right.
think certainly this year, or maybe next, it's really going to be top of mind for a lot of people. So hopefully the confluence of financial sustainability and looking to expand tax base through expansion of the commercial district will happen concurrently and without too much causing too much fuss.
Hey, Rick, 2 things. One is you mentioned the traffic study. I didn't quite get, has anything significant or is it just isn't complete yet?
It's not complete yet. Should be complete by the end of this month, and then it will be issued.
Is there any of any interest, anything happening there, any of interest, recommendations or that type of thing?
Oh yeah, they're going to come up with specific recommendations. You know, as I said, the signage is terrible or non-existent in the downtown in terms of directing traffic, directing where you can park, where you can't park, time limits on parking. Noted like the sidewalk on Willow Street that starts from Asbury and goes towards Willow is so poorly defined that it could be mistaken for a roadway. It's almost like 2 or 3 inches above the roadway, and it's pavement, and there's no markings that delineate it. Sidewalks are in generally poor condition. There's no enforcement of any kind of regulations because the regulations are all contradictory. So the report will come to note those and then make recommendations for specific corrective actions.
Okay.
That's going to involve the DPW and the police department. So stay tuned.
And then the other question I had was, you talked about the fact that the traffic study was one thing, and the looking at a new property. Are there any other things that the HDC is working on?
No, we're enjoying the glow of having closed on the property after 7 years of trial and tribulation. So, you know, it's sort of like the dog that actually caught the car. It's now like, oh, okay, it's actually done. What do we do now? So, but the thought is we want to reinvest that money as soon as we can. So I'm going to be talking with Anthony. He doesn't know this yet. And Chad Smith, who's also in commercial and residential real estate, and see if we can come up with some plan to reapproach the owners of Dodge and Dodge Tree and at least get an option on the property. Lamson, the same thing, is trying to get some movement there because really those are the only two properties in the existing commercial district that have the potential for going from really low yield properties in terms of use and tax revenue to a higher and better use and a higher level of tax revenue. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. So Anthony, heads up, put your magic thinking hat on.
Appreciate it.
So
But I think that's all the more reason to sort of, trumpet the success of this transaction to the town, just because it's definitely a really important milestone for HTC.
okay, that's good advice, and we'll work on that. So when and if this comes up, and maybe we'll get a presentation for 2 minutes at annual town meeting, just to highlight the project and the costs and benefits.
Yeah, and we're happy to take a look at anything you've got and offer our 2 cents.
Very good.
Excellent.
Okay, if
Well,
that's
thank
it,
you
then.
both.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Guys.
Thank you.
All right. Next item, which is, fortunately, we don't have Joe here. I did, Christina, I think you talked to him yesterday at the sort of liaison update, and I briefly talked to him as well. So he's actually attending the school committee meeting, which is happening or about to happen right now. So maybe we can briefly give an update on that, but certainly in terms of finance director search, what I at least heard from Joe, and jump in, Christina, if you've got more detail, is that continuing to collect resumes as it gets advertised. And I think they expect to have between, sort of 15 to 20 applications. That being said, it's, not necessarily 15 to 20 good applications, but at least there's, it seems like there's interest in the position. So, but I think it's going to be out there for till pretty much the end of March. And then it will be a matter of sifting through those and winnowing down the candidates pool. I don't know if you heard anything additional on that, Christina.
No, I didn't. We didn't actually talk about it.
And I actually also briefly, Joe had mentioned to me, and he might have mentioned this to you as well, Christina, that I guess Diane Katz is going to effectively be interim finance director until the position is filled. And at our next regularly scheduled FinCom meeting, we talked about having both Joe and Diane attend, just so we could, potentially ask questions for those of you in the committee that may not have met Diane, meet her at least visually, and sort of ask any questions so that we can at least be efficient in how we might use her time going forward, since she's got a lot on her plate now. So
In light of that, is there much going on with the budget that she's involved in, or is that? I know there has to be some tweaking as we go along, but I didn't know whether she's involved in that or not.
There is some tweaking. I don't think it's certainly not the level with everything else she's got on her plate that Marissa's sort of involved, and it was sort of in a place that it was pretty far along. But Joe had mentioned that there is some minor tweaking going along, so she's clearly in the loop on all of that stuff. So we can certainly talk to her about that. And certainly as it gets finalized with regard to the school side of things, she'll have to be involved in coming up with the rolled up numbers, et cetera. She's also working on the latest quarterly report, according to Joe. So she'll certainly be doing. I think probably the expectation is we're going to get the critical things that Marissa was working on, just maybe not the depth of materials that we would get from Marissa. But I think certainly anything that we need from her, we should ask it at the next meeting. Figure out a path forward.
Okay.
Sort of switching to budget items. I mean, really other than that, like I said, there may be some tweaks that get done, finalized on the sort of town side. The big open issue was the school budget. At the meeting that we had, the sort of chairs meeting that Christine and I attended last week, the school did present a budget that had decreased their spending, not by as much as we'd asked, but by enough that can avoid an override for us. So we had asked for approximately 400,000, and I don't have the exact number with me, but it was, they were proposing reducing their assessment by, I think it was 316,000 or 300,000 and change. But it was enough then to close the gap, not by much, but the override gap on the Hamilton side.
What
What side?
what changes did they make?
Some of it was an increase in revenue, and then there was, and unfortunately, I don't have the specifics of it. It's actually being presented right now at the school committee meeting, so it was more of a preview that we got. There were the operational expenses. Some of it was materials. I think there were a couple positions, if I remember correctly, Christina.
I think there was one teacher position
Right.
or one, actually I have my notes, I think. Oh no, I don't have. I think it was one, reduced one TA position, a computer program, moved $50,000 to a grant. So that was a total reduction of $140,000. And they increased their estimate of revenues by about 160,000. So right around $300,000, which reduced our share by $195,000, which Joe had said we had $192,000, in the red, whatever, for Prop 2.5. So they just barely did enough to get us to not have to do Prop 2.5 override. I think there was a little bit of wiggle room in the town budget. I asked a couple questions that Joe said, well, yeah, I didn't want to take that out yet, kind of answer. So
Right. Well, exactly.
I don't know if there were any increases anywhere that I don't know yet. So
yeah, no, I would imagine that there's any, the feeling I get is if there's any changes to the town side of the budget, it's, lower than we originally anticipated, not increase. So, and just to be clear, this was presented by Mary Beth and Vinny as well, and Michelle Bailey and Michelle Horgan were also on the call as well. So I assume it has their support, but it had not been blessed by the full school committee, which is happening tonight. It was their recommended budget. So I personally think it will probably pass, but we'll find out in a couple hours.
And what was the source of the added revenue?
Was it a change in state funding? Do you remember I asked that question, John, and they said there was some student
I th-
thing funding was added that,
I think it was, yeah, was it the fact that the hit for, given the fact that state aid is based off of, a lot of it's based, there's a formula, but it's based off enrollment. And because enrollment went down due to the pandemic, they were estimating that the revenue was going to be impacted by the enrollment numbers. And I think they were using, if I remember, something like 95% or something like that. And I think they determined that they didn't have to make that conservative an estimate on revenue. They think maybe they got more guidance from the state that, does that sound at all familiar, Christina?
I thought there was some specific additional funding that was added in, but in any case, it was some, I did kind of try to ask that. Did they just sort of say, oh, well, we said it was, 3, let's make it 3.25. But no, they said there was some, in the meantime, there has been some change in the information they're getting from the state about how much state funding they're going to get. So.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like an actual legislative thing or if it was more, their guidance was that it was actually going to be better. But we're sort of saying the same thing.
Yeah, I thought they called it something like SOA funding or,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did mention that.
that
yeah.
sounded like an additional thing that they hadn't included before that they are including.
Right, that they were, yeah, that they were excluding from their revenues.
So overall, it's like a minuscule change on their part. But on the other hand, that's what Joe asked for and they went back and they did it. So I'm
Yeah, that was sort of our reaction. And look, I should say, was this is appreciated and you're doing the right thing. You're just barely doing the right thing. And we would have loved to seen, a greater reduction in expenses. But at the same time, the overall net result is it's a positive development, certainly, both in terms of avoiding override and actually, the collaborative nature of things. I can't say, I think I said as much that it's not a slam dunk in a sense. And I didn't leave the meeting jumping for joy that it was, such a huge concession, but it also, from a practical standpoint, it got us to where we needed to get in terms of the override, which is more than they've done in prior years, certainly from Wenham's perspective. And, OPEB's still in there, which is good. I think if you're trying to talk to us, Nick, you're on mute, but.
Is Wenham going to be all right with this, or do they have is this not satisfy their override requirements?
My take was they're probably okay with it just because of the enrollment shift helps them, and they seem to react more positively than Hamilton sort of did. At least that was a take that was how sort of I read it. What do you think, Christina?
Yeah, I think they weren't as far in their budget process, so they weren't able to say, but they seem to be like, oh, okay, that's going to be fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
They feel like they're going to be fine this year. Sounds like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where we are with that. And like I said, well, the next big thing is whether the school committee actually adopts that as their budget. And then, we'll certainly have, further opportunity in terms of, when we break it down to specific, warrant articles. Certainly, I think the school committee was looking for, support from all the boards on this. And, that's something for us to we can certainly talk about it now, or you know, we will be in the future. But that's definitely what they were looking for.
Yeah, I think if when we probably actually get the warrants, probably a good time to talk about it. The warrant article.
I think it's probably premature to talk about that. You know, I think it's maybe that's a good segue to briefly talk about the warrant articles. If everyone's got that list that was circulated, really it hasn't changed. I think the biggest sort of issue that I've heard is it's really the sort of town hall and the mechanics of the amount of CPC funding there, and when to hold a debt exclusion vote. But I think, and there's others of you that may be closer to this. I think I'd heard that the CPC is having a meeting sometime in the next week to discuss if their contribution to the project would actually increase. But I don't know specifically how much.
They're meeting on the tomorrow is when the
Okay.
CPC is meeting, and it ostensibly to increase it. They're going to see what they can, but they'd like to do it $1 million.
And it was it 3 million before?
I don't remember. Hold on. Yeah, I don't have the dollar amount. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to say it was 3 million. I thought so. Maybe it's up to 4 million. That's pretty significant. But you know, I certainly think one of the things being debated then is certainly has to go to ATM on both the town side and the CPC side for approval. Again, but then I guess the question is really, you know, assuming it does pass, which is not necessarily, you know, something you should assume, but when is the ideal time to have a debt exclusion vote? And there's some debate about whether it should be in the spring or potentially, you know, as late as next fall.
Right now, the objective would be to have that done. And by the way, David, jump in. The idea is to have it very close to when CPC, excuse me, got something caught in my throat. Very close to the ATM, so they can keep the bid that's already in place. Actually, they've already said that they would keep the bid plus 17%, because there's some things that prices have gone up. So that would be the sooner that can be done, the more likely is we could. The sooner it can be done, then we can confirm the actual bid pricing and get the project moving.
What does everyone think about that? Do we think enough has changed since last fall? I'm a little worried that it's going to suffer the same fate.
What's happening right now, they have a woman, Christina Alexander, who is working to develop informational videos and documents to educate the town on the history, the need, the the pricing, what is being done, and it's not elaborate. And they've actually reduced the budget. They're looking for the additional funding from the CPC. So these are all the pieces that she's putting together to create a commentary and an educational presentation for everybody. So that's what's going to be happening between now and ATM.
And how are they going to, I guess, disseminate that information?
The patch, Facebook, there's several things that are online, and then social media, and then I think they're going to be sending something out to people.
Yeah, I mean,
She's also doing a survey from people so that they understand. So we understand what the need is from people, or not the need, but the where people sit right now.
yeah, and I think it's understanding the negative sentiment towards it is going to be very important, because ultimately, if you're not, I don't know, it's maybe a simplistic way to look at it, but if you voted for it the first time, you're probably voting for it the second time. But it's really about changing the people's minds that voted against it. Because it really wasn't people that were attending STM that were the ones voting against it, because it passed by a pretty clear margin at STM. So the question is, can you reach that negative sentiment with the messaging, as well as with the survey? Because it's certainly, understanding what that sentiment is the only way, I think, to, overcome it, or at least talk to it.
Yeah, there's an understanding that a lot of it is an A or a B choice. You either do town hall or you do schools, and it's not that, and that's part of the education process.
Yeah, and I guess it's, and how are they educating people that it's, and I'm sure you probably don't have the specifics, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Nick, but I sort of struggle in my mind, how do you educate someone that it's not an A or B decision? Because it could actually be, until we know the cost of B. That's why I think part of me is sort of thinking that, is it still premature? Are we going to get the same answer, because we're not going to be able to adequately answer that question?
It is. The question really is this a necessary investment? There has been a time before where the town hall was closed because it didn't meet ADA requirements. It could happen again. So the question is this a necessary investment? And if it's concluded that it is necessary, and that's one of the first things you have to decide, then you have to figure out how it fits into the financing of it plus schools. And it's not, again, it's something that has to be done. Otherwise,
Right.
You don't have. There is a thought, I think, from some people in town that why don't we do away with town hall and do everything online? And that might be a headset. I mean, a thought process that you can't overcome. I mean, it's, if you feel that there is no need to have a physical spot, then you don't have to renovate it, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's whether you agree with that sentiment or not, it's overcoming that sentiment is.
I think if they can make the case, and that's the first part, is make the case that it's a necessary investment, because the building is 120 years old, and It's going to be, it's not going to last unless something is done. And it doesn't, it is not in compliance with ADA requirements. So that's number one that has to be identified. And if you wait, the cost of the project is going to escalate very quickly. And that's the other big concern that the group has. Already we see some escalations based on the pricing of materials. Lumber and steel has gone up. And so those are things that have to, that's something that's coming, and it can be detrimental. So if, as you say, wait, I think you've got, you lose one, momentum, and two, you lose, you're starting from scratch. Because if you wait long enough that you have to wait till the information is regathered from the, or is gathered from the schools, and the schools know what they're doing, they're slow. That could be a couple of years. And then you have to, and remember, this project took several years. Just, we've been working at this as a group, I think 3 years at least to be where we are today.
Yeah. And what would the plan be? And maybe they haven't thought this much through, if it does fail again.
I don't know. And I say that because I think there's an interest in keeping going, but there's also a knowledge that what has been bid on would change radically.
Right.
And so that's the concern. So they're trying to make that a non-issue by moving it forward now.
Yeah, and part of why I asked the question too is that, tied in with the, this has to, it's not a question of, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Is, okay, if this fails, then, okay, well, here's our alternative. We're going to have to build facilities someplace else. And it's going to, there aren't really good options, town-owned land. And it's going to effectively be, anyway, it's painting a picture of the alternative is actually going to be a lot worse.
Well, the other thing is that if we don't do a renovation and you do a new construction, CPC money cannot be used. So where we have CPC money available to pay down this, it's already there, it's already accumulating. That cannot be used, and it'll come out of our budget all the time.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an important point, certainly. All right, yeah, I mean, I think that'll be probably one of the most, I mean, I don't know, I was gonna say contentious issues at ATM, although, it wasn't contentious at STM. It was, it just got defeated at the polls. And I'm not sure that's going to be any different, at least I mean, it may sail through ATM discussion. Yeah, it's interesting, see how this unfolds.
They're already pulling back some of the cost by reducing, they haven't taken anything out of the project, but right now they've taken some of the contingency out. So they had a large contingency, and they've reduced the amount of contingency. If something drastic happens during construction, then they'd have to go into a situation of reducing the cost at that point. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You've been entertaining us with between your ringtones and
I don't even know what that was for.
Related to other warrant articles, from what I've heard, Christina, let me know if you've heard anything different. It's I don't think any of the other items have really changed, and there aren't any citizens petitions that that they have to date. And I think the warrant closes soon. So other than the budget and town hall, I think it's it might be relatively straightforward in terms of warrant articles.
John, would you mind sending me a list? I don't recall seeing it.
Sure, yeah. I think it's still, the list I have, I believe was 2 weeks ago from on the 24th from our last meeting. I sent an attachment right before that meeting, but I can send it to you again, David. I can send it to you right now.
Thank you.
I have a dumb question. What day, what day is town meeting?
May 1st?
Uh,
May 1st?
That is a really good question. Christine, I think it's,
I think it's May 1st.
yeah, I think it is May 1st. Yeah, May 1st falls on Saturday. So I'm pretty sure that's it.
Put that on my calendar.
Hooray, hooray, the 1st of May. Outdoor screwing begins today. That's what my father-in-law used to say.
So the, yeah, unless there's any further budget related items or warrant related items we want to discuss. Because I mean, I don't know if there's anything, I'm thinking about future meetings too, in terms of, you know, evaluating some of these things, but like, I don't even know on the town hall side of things, if it makes, if there's anyone that's an opponent of it, it makes sense to invite them to one of our meetings. Just if it's more information or fact finding we want to do before we vote on warrant articles. I feel like most of these things we've discussed in detail as a group. Not to say there might not be new information, but
That's an interesting one, John. I don't know that there's a groundswell or a group of people that are
Right,
saying,
yeah.
don't do this. It's just, there's just a disinterest.
right, exactly. It's not like they're being led by anyone in particular, as far as I understand.
I think there's someone who sent a letter to the selectmen. I can get that person's name if that's correct and get it to you, John.
Sure.
A letter in opposition to the project.
Okay. Yeah, and then we can invite them and you know, if they're comfortable attending, great. You know, it's not just to hear all sides in advance. Yeah, it's like I feel like I keep waiting for like the other shoe to drop. There'd be something that is going to hit us last minute, because I feel I feel like we're so far ahead of the game, it seems like, in terms of the budget and the warrant analysis, that I just wonder if there's more we should be doing. But I don't see much of controversy outside of budget in town hall on the warrant article list. But we shall see. If we want to move to the next, actually it was the number 6, the prior one, the annual report. So I'd circulated a draft. Unfortunately, it was only about a half hour before our meeting, which is I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at it. There are a few things, and I think some of the things I'd highlighted, I'm not sure I was going to include. Let me know if anyone had a chance to look at it, and if they want to comment on it. And certainly, it's due. I don't know if it's officially or unofficially, but I believe it's Monday, the 15th, that it's due for inclusion.
I had a chance,
Oh, great.
read it over quickly. It looks really good to me. I liked it a lot. Look,
No, thank you. But certainly it dragged on a bit. And I also felt like I was, some things I was too general and maybe I spent too much time on sort of our process, but there's sort of a lot to talk about, but at the same time, I want to be cognizant of it not being too many pages, because then no one will read it. Certainly let me know if there aren't any views that are not represented, or points we should make, and I'm more than happy to include them. If you haven't read it, high level, it really talks about what we do as a community, general overall fiscal situation of the town, and really at a high level, it's about the fact that while there's a lot of positive things about our financial situation, there are a lot of challenges ahead, and really highlighting that our tax rate is once again very high, and only going to get higher, and that we've got this structural problem that is going to lead to most likely Prop 2.5 overrides in the future. And on top of that, we've got a bunch of projects that need funding, and not a clear path in terms of how to turn the situation around. Certainly, if anyone has any comments in the next few days, let me know.
I don't know if you may want to put in there something about a possibility of a position opening. I accepted an offer on my house. So as of June 1st, unless someone has a house for me in Hamilton, which I'm desperately looking for, you might be down a member, unfortunately.
Well, congratulations on selling a house, because that's important. But
turns out that was the easy part.
right.
Now,
because the reverse situation is sometimes more difficult when it's when you found the new place and it's you can't sell the old one. Yeah, and I put a line there about that, but I sort of did at the last minute. I want to make it clear that we're always looking for new members, even only as a bench. But one of the things we should probably do is also, and I can let Joe and Sean know this, is put a sort of announcement in the BOS for openings, and really sort of associate member openings right now, which just so that we can potentially get more people interested. Or know that there could be a potential one for next fiscal year.
sorry.
it's not really that far away.
No, it really isn't. I mean,
When Valerie and I talked the other day, I said, well, and I was like, well, actually, April, May, June, it's not.
Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, it's
Yeah, but luckily, my sister still lives in town. She's like, you can live in my basement. Thanks.
so you got a plan B.
Yeah, great.
Looking further, nothing really discussed tonight about the forecast. I still have to, I unfortunately have not had the time to tweak the sort of end product of that forecast, which is really looking at various assumptions. But we should talk at our next meeting, sort of how we then, potentially disseminate that information. Because I think we've got enough of the ammunition to to then start painting the picture of, worst case, best case scenarios, and they're all going to show, generally increased taxes, and to help paint the picture of the overall situation. But now it just needs to be distilled into something that's easier to digest. So we should certainly talk about how the next meeting about how we what we do with it.
I can't remember, were we gonna send something out, put it in our recommendations?
Oh, I think that's, I don't know if we talked about it, but maybe we had, but I've just forgotten. I think that's I think it's a great idea. Like that's the easiest way because it goes with the warrant.
Because when is that gonna go out? If the meeting's May 1st, that has to go out sometime in April, right? No.
Yeah, that would be roughly probably like mid-April.
Yep.
It's like the deadline's usually about 20 days before the 2 weeks to 20 days before the town meeting.
So our next meeting's on the 24th. We're gonna talk about that. And then we really don't have a lot of time to finish it up and get we have a couple weeks then probably to get the our book of recommendations done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that by our next meeting, we'll actually have at least a skeleton draft of the warrant, so that we can start then coming up with the commentary. Because that's going to be then our focus. And I think just including the sort of forecast is part of that, and sort of general budget discussion. But having that, as an appendix is a great way to get it out, get the word out. So moving to liaison updates. One thing I wanted to talk about is, so there's going to be for lack of a better term, we'll call it David's Umbrella Committee, which is sort of a Uber committee sort of chairs meeting. Essentially, it's 2 weeks from now, so it's going to be late afternoon before our next meeting on the 24th. We do have to make a decision in terms of, since Christina and I, as well as David, as the sort of originator, we're all invited. We've got to determine amongst the three of us who attends. David, certainly, as this has been important for you. Happy for you to be one of the two that attend, if you're interested in doing that.
John, I think Joe has sort of postured me as a co-host and not as a representative of FinCom.
Oh, is that, if we can do that, that's great. I just didn't know if Christina and I attended and you were there even as co-host, that it constitutes a quorum. I don't know.
Well, I'll be guided by whatever you all wish, but it might be nice to have someone from FinCom in addition to my whatever role Joe has in store.
David is positioning himself for a future committee to get onto.
Pardon me?
You're positioning yourself to get onto a future committee.
Let's hope I have a future.
You do.
Well, we can figure that out then, David, and either, if we can all three attend, great. If not, Christina, between the two of us, we can tag team who attends.
Yeah. Yeah, either way, if you want to, that's fine. If you want me to, that's fine too. I can report back.
How big is this group going to be?
It's really, I mean, it's a, I gotta pull up the invite, because I don't want to say it's every committee, but it's
pretty close.
It's pretty close to it. I mean, it's.
Yes, but
it's
if
selectmen
it's,
planning.
if you have every committee, that makes sense. But if you have multiples in every committee, then you're going to be huge.
Yeah, I think it's the concept was one representative, either a chair or a designee from each board or committee.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's Christina and I do a lot of tag teaming on this kind of stuff. So that's at times we both attend some of these chair meetings. But I think most of the committees, although actually I don't think that's the case, because Rick was telling me, I think that, well, for some of them, people wear two hats. So for example, Rick's on like HDC will be represented, but like he and Brian Stein are both, I think, on both planning and HDC. So, but anyway, wait, it's to answer your question, Nick, it's a lot of committee, including the school committee. No, it's a great idea, and I think the idea is to kick it off and start having, probably quarterly meetings with with everything going on in terms of planning process. It certainly makes sense. And that was another thing that came out of, one thing I should mention, from our sort of chairs meeting with the, sort of 5 boards with the school committee last week, already deciding that, post ATM, that we would have another meeting of that, sort of subgroup, just so that we don't lose the momentum, and basically have, as we've done in prior years, once ATM's over, we don't talk to the school committee until like, the following November. So we don't want to do that, because, the level of discussion and collaboration has been good, and we want to keep the momentum going with that. There's certainly plenty to talk about once the budget's over. Any other updates from anyone else from liaison point of view?
No, Don, I just had a follow-up question on the patent arrangement. Since there was an article in the Globe, a very positive article about that arrangement. I think when we last discussed it, I thought there was discussion, and I thought agreement that we ought to put ourselves on record as not having approved certain parts of that agreement, especially the one-sided ability of one party to terminate. And you were going to communicate that somehow to Joe. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I guess I haven't even seen the actual like final executed draft, because we had made another comment about, if I remember correctly, about being able to terminate. I thought that was potentially addressed, but
could you follow up on that?
Yeah, we need to follow up with that anyway, just to find out what the situation is.
Thank you.
What did the article say about the arrangement?
It quoted significantly from the entrepreneur, the fellow, I forget his name, who's undertaking this project, how it has, in his view, worked well elsewhere. And I think Sean Farrell was quoted as being positive about this as a potential source of revenue.
Yeah, well, I mean, my point of view is, publicly I'd be positive about it, but the proof is going to be in the pudding, and
Well, that's what concerns me about the duration issue.
Um,
Remember, this was hanging by a short thread, the town involvement with that parcel. And then Joe advocated for give me another year to see if it can become self-sustaining. And we agreed to that, then the virus came about. And in the course, in that continuum, this new use evolved. But we shouldn't lose sight of our position prior to that. And I'm concerned if if it doesn't work, but we can't do anything about duration, whereas the other side can. I just find that problematic.
Yeah, no, well, let me follow up and find out what the specific answer is, because that was
Okay.
the number one comment that I gave to him after we saw the first revised draft, was that really the only thing that matters is our flexibility in moving forward. And being able to entertain, any sale options or other options with regard to the property, so that we don't continue to lose money.
Thank you.
It was interesting, about a week and a half ago, there was a seminar that was given on open space. It included the trustees, the who does the path, Essex, the Essex County Pathways. What's that, Christine?
Was it Essex County Greenbelt? Is that what you're trying to think of?
Yes, Greenbelt. And then there was another group, I think it was a state group. But it was all, that seminar was sponsored by the folks from the Patton Estate. The group that, the separate group that is supporting it, they actually put it on under the auspices of the Patton Homestead. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't know that they were actually doing that, or I didn't know whether it was any revenue or anything going on there, but that was, I don't know, Valerie, were you aware of that? No.
No.
Yeah, and was this like a Zoom kind of presentation seminar, or?
Yeah, there was a host, and then there were people from the three groups, the state, the trustees, and the Beltway, the Greenway. And they all talked about what's going on in the future and what how open space is important and people are using it. They touched on the homestead, but it was really, but it was sponsored by the homestead. And Mark Johnson actually had a commentary in there at the end on behalf of the homestead.
What was anything of note in terms of?
No, I just thought the only reason I bring it up is that there's some group using the homestead to promote things like open space, and I don't think we knew that. It was a surprise to me.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was one of those things, because I know they did those really sort of small, pre-COVID, those small sort of seminars that generated a, small amount of revenue. If it was one of those kinds of things and they just turned it into something virtual. I'm not even sure, whether that's even potentially generates any revenue or not, but maybe it does. I don't know, that's
just information.
Yeah, at least it's some activity.
I can follow up with Kaylee too and see what's been going on there lately.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with Joe and just at least get a copy of that final agreement. And then if it doesn't have the flexibility we were looking for, it certainly will note that where applicable. I think it's, I think even regardless of what the change they made, there's some gray area to it because they've got to perform from a revenue perspective. But I think, the clock is ticking and, if things aren't substantially improved by, next fall, we've got to start looking at those options, potentially even before that. At least talking about what those options are. Because, yeah, so. Any other liaison updates? I think the only other thing we have is, Valerie, you had circulated some minutes, I believe.
Yeah, I apologize for the tardiness, so I only put 2. Figured maybe we can get through 2. And I had already reviewed them, so.
I skimmed through them real quick and they looked good to me.
Yeah, these are from January, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Is everybody else ready to approve them?
Yes.
Yes,
I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 6th and January 19th, 2021.
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor?
We have to do it by name.
Yeah, roll call.
Dave Wenger, yes.
Nick Tenson, yes.
Christina Shank Hargrove, yes.
Valerie McCormick, yes.
John Prulidge, yes. We are unanimous. They are approved. All right, any further thoughts or discussions? I think, as we talked about, our next meeting will be, we'll have Joe and we'll have Diane. But then I think we start digging into hopefully warrants and really divvying those up and having a plan going forward in terms of the financial commentary and forecasting.
Right. On the Town Hall Building Committee, Nick shared last year's text accompanying our recommendation. And I think, Nick, that Mike Toomey made a few minor suggestions and otherwise was in agreement that it was appropriate.
Oh, great.
I haven't looked at it again for a while, but I think we ought to, once we get the data, the figures, emphasize the cost in terms of borrowing.
Right, what the annual actual cost would be as opposed to the overall number, which is, I think, hard to digest. So do they have revised numbers based on, the shift in sort of CPC funding? I know there's a lot of motion, so probably not, but maybe before our next meeting, they would have those available, because I think that's an important component.
The project manager on this, guy named John Scribona, he's getting the final budget actually by last week. It'll be presented this week. They normally meet on Thursday. This week it's going to be Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning. The reason for that is, as I mentioned before, the CPC is meeting on Thursday, tomorrow, and they wanted to wait until they found out exactly what the CPC was going to contribute. So the two things will be dovetailed then. They'll know where the CPC is, and secondly, they'll be able to take the revised budget and identify what it will cost the town.
Great. Okay, so we'll wait for those numbers once the CPC makes their decision.
Do you
We're not
think-
meeting next week, are we?
No, so our next is the 24th.
Do we think the select board is voting on the warrant on Monday? They're meeting on Monday. Hopefully
I think
they'll,
that's I thought that was just to close the warrant.
close the warrant, yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll have the final list of the warrant articles.
we should, you're right, yeah,
Next
assuming
week.
they,
So maybe we can have the skeleton of our book of recommendations ready for our meeting on the 24th. So then we can decide who's going to do what. And we can have those finished by whatever our next meeting is.
yeah, so I think I'm I've got the original of the prior draft. So I can, once we get the warrant, I can put that together and put certain things, for example, like the CPC and the town hall related ones. I'll put the same text that we had in the fall. So we can modify.
I'd like to revisit that, and I think I drafted it, and I think it could be better. I think it might be able to be done better.
Oh, no, yeah, no, I'm not saying we'd go with the same exact wording. It's more that we'd have we could use that as a starting point.
Yeah.
So you're not looking at a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, what I will do, because I think this is really one of the bigger issues on the ATM, I will,
It's like the only issue.
what's that?
It's like the only issue this year.
Yeah, but I'll let you guys know what the revised budget is exactly, what CPC is going to be contributing, and what the ask will be, and also what Christine Alexander is doing in terms of her the work she's doing to promote this particular project.
Right, yeah, that'd be great.
So I'll have all three of those for next week. Just a write-up.
2 weeks, the 24th.
No, I'll just write it up and distribute it.
Okay, gotcha. Next week, gotcha. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that we can then dig into it on the 24th. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You cold? Are you cold, Christine?
No,
You look like you have a jacket on there.
I do, kind of, yeah. I'm sporty today.
Oh,
I'm in the Berkshires, so
Oh, nice.
how nice. That is nice.
Yeah. Well, we've got some great weather ahead, at least for the next few days. So
oh, yeah, so nice.
yeah, that's gonna be nice.
I got out in the garden, working the garden already.
Already?
Yeah.
Nice. Just in time for that April snowstorm that we always get.
That's good. My neighbor has skating rink. He puts out a skating rink each year
Yeah.
and lines it all with plastic. And he asked me, he said, do you want this plastic? And I realized, hey, that's a great idea. I could make hoops so I could start plants earlier and make them with that plastic. Would be
There you go.
kind of fun.
Perfect.
All right, guys.
All right, everyone. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. I moved that we adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Roll call.
Dave Wanger, aye.
Nick Tenson, aye.
Christine Shank-Hargrove, aye.
Sorry. I'm gonna get our new order. down.
I know exactly. I'm all over the place. And John Perulage, aye.
All right, guys.
We are
Good.
adjourned. Thanks,
See you.
everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye
now.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.